Millionaire CEO fires his assistant in anger, then realizes she was the genius behind his empire? Some people leave quietly. No slammed doors, no broken glass, just the echo of everything they carried, and no one ever saw. He fired her in front of a room full of people. Called her a ghost, a liability. But what he didn't know was this. She wasn't the reason his company failed. She was the reason it hadn't collapsed already. And by the time he realized what he'd lost, she was already gone. With the silence you fired, the conference room was too quiet. The kind of silence that doesn't settle, but coils. Julian Blackwood stood at the head of the long glass table, jaw clenched, gaze sharp enough to wound. Behind him, the skyline of Chicago glared back through the windows, steel and glass, and nothing warm. Executives sat like statues, except for their shifting eyes and the occasional twitch of discomfort. But Maya Delgado didn't shift. She stood near the corner of the room, notepad in hand, face calm. Too calm. Julian's voice cut through the air like a gavel. "Is this a joke?" he said, holding the failed Martech contract in one hand like it personally offended him. "We lost a $7,500,000 0-cents deal because of a timeline error?" No one answered. Elijah dropped his eyes to the table. The others followed. Julian's eyes found Maya's. "You were supposed to review the logistics. You've been sitting here silent all morning. You have nothing to say?" Still, she said nothing. He slammed the file on the table. Several flinched. "I don't need statues in this company. If you have something to say, say it. If not, get out." Maya met his gaze with that same unnerving stillness. "I flagged the timeline issue last week, Mr. Blackwood. You asked not to be interrupted." Her voice was soft, clear, no defense, no drama, just a fact. The room dropped into stunned silence. Even the AC seemed to pause. Julian stood, frozen. Then, like something snapped inside him, he pointed toward the door. "You're dismissed. Efficient or not, I can't run a company with ghosts." Maya nodded once. "Understood." And that was it. No tears, no excuses, no desperation. Just the echo of her heels as she walked away. Later that evening, Julian sat in his office, the city lights flickering across the polished floor like broken glass. The day hadn't improved. Claire, Maya's replacement, had already missed 2 follow-ups. Emails went unanswered. His calendar was wrong. Elijah had messaged 3 times, asking if Maya was really gone. Her absence was louder than her presence had ever been. "Mr. Blackwood," Claire stepped in, holding a stack of folders. "Also, she left this." He placed a sealed white envelope on his desk. Julian stared at it long after she left. He opened it only after the office had emptied. Inside was a single sheet of paper. 2 paragraphs, elegant handwriting. "Mr. Blackwood? Since I will not be returning, I feel obligated to note that the client timelines for Q2 are misaligned with product launch dates. This will cause conflicts with Martech, Orlon Group, and Wexel Corp if left unaddressed. Additionally, the Bright data patch recommended by IT will crash concurrent update systems. Elijah may have a more stable fix. I've already spoken with him." Maya Delgado. Julian read it twice, then again. He pulled up the flagged Martech email from last Thursday. She had sent it. He'd marked it not urgent. A cold weight settled in his chest. He called Elijah. "Bright data, what's the actual issue?" Elijah sounded surprised. "The update causes overloads." Maya caught it. She mapped a workaround. "I've been refining her fix." "She didn't tell me that." "She didn't want credit," Elijah said simply. "She just wanted it fixed." Julian stared at the wall. The woman had quietly kept his empire from crumbling, and he had fired her. The next morning, Wexel pulled out of their proposal. Julian stood silent as Claire stammered through the news. He went to the trash bin, dug through the papers from the night before, and pulled out a post-it he'd tossed aside. Maya's handwriting. "Wexel follows Martech. If one pulls, the other won't be far behind." She had seen it coming. Every step, every failure, she'd seen it, and he hadn't listened. Julian sat heavily in his chair, staring at the square of yellow paper in his hand. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't thinking like a CEO. He wasn't thinking about shareholders, margins, or damage control. He was thinking about her. The quiet woman who never asked for praise, who never demanded a spotlight, and who might have been the only reason his company hadn't already fallen apart. He reached for her personnel file. No emergency contact, no cell number, only a line from the original application, Southside, Chicago. She had vanished. No forwarding address, no return call, only silence. And now that silence was louder than ever. Chapter 1. Absence is loud. He didn't expect her absence to echo, but it did. In every unanswered email, in every missed detail on his schedule, in every sigh Claire let slip when she couldn't find a file Maya used to summon from thin air. Julian sat at his desk staring at the blinking cursor and a blank email draft. It had been 2 days since he fired her. Elijah had sent another follow-up that morning. FYI, the analytics dashboard Maya set up is misfiring. We can't track client churn without it. Any idea where she stored the config files? Julian didn't reply. He didn't know. And the fact that he didn't know felt personal. There had been comfort in her silence, he realized. An eerie, efficient calm. Now, there was only noise, and the kind of chaos that couldn't be managed through titles or anger. He clicked through the company's internal systems. Maya's email was already deactivated. Her drive access revoked. A name erased. But not forgotten. Not by the company, and certainly not by him. Mr. Blackwood? Claire appeared in the doorway holding a latte he didn't ask for and a file he didn't need. Elijah is asking if we should delay the Q2 review, he said. Maya usually coordinated cross-team summaries. Of course she did. She coordinated everything. Julian's reply came colder than he meant. Reschedule the meeting and send a note to Elijah. Ask him to pull last quarter's model as a backup. Claire nodded and retreated, visibly relieved. He almost called her back to apologize. Almost. Instead, he stood, left his office, walked the perimeter of the floor where the hum of productivity once followed Maya like a ghost. At the analytics bay, 2 junior analysts were arguing about data segmentation. Maya would fixed it with a sentence, a glance, even. In legal, Marcus was buried in the knowledge agreement. Where's the translated version Maya helped us with? He asked, not looking up. Julian stared. What? Marcus blinked. She rewrote Section 3.4 in business English. It's the only reason we closed that loophole. You didn't know? He didn't answer. She had been everywhere. Silently, steadily, unfailingly. Julian walked out before the shame reached his eyes. That evening, the city shimmered in steel and light beyond the windows, but inside his penthouse it was dim. He loosened his tie and stared at his untouched dinner. The steak was perfect, the wine was expensive, but everything tasted wrong. He sat down, pulled Maya's old file from his bag and spread it across the table. No errors, no red flags, no complaints from HR. Not a single late arrival. Just a list of dates, achievements, and notes that now read like hieroglyphs. Things he had skimmed, dismissed, never truly seen. He found her first performance review, his comment. Highly efficient, lacks assertiveness. He ran a hand over his jaw. Laughed without humor. Assertiveness? She'd shown it. Quietly, strategically, when it mattered. He just hadn't known how to hear it. He poured a second drink and stared out the window. Absence shouldn't feel like this, but it did. The next morning, he found Claire crying in the hallway outside Elijah's office. Not sobbing, just quietly overwhelmed. She asked how I balanced Elijah's calendar and the system dashboard, she whispered when he approached. I didn't even know Maya handled Elijah's reports. She didn't say anything, she just did it. Julian didn't reply. He couldn't. He simply turned and walked away. Into his office. Into the silence she used to fill. This time, he didn't sit. He opened his drawer, pulled out the note she left him, and reread it for the 5th time. Then he reached for his phone. Elijah, he said when the line picked up, how long has Maya been helping your department? There was a pause. Then, a while. She started asking questions during lunch breaks, tweaks to server bottlenecks, system overrides. Then she started writing her own diagnostics. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I did. Twice. You brushed it off." Julian exhaled. Bitter. "Of course I did." "She didn't care about credit, Julian," Elijah added gently. "She cared about the company, about fixing things." The line went dead. Julian sat in that silence for a long time. Later that afternoon, a note from legal popped up on his screen. "Wexel Corp has officially withdrawn from the strategic partnership." He stared at it, then opened Maya's old post-it again. "Wexel follows Martech. If one pulls, the other won't be far behind." She had predicted this, she had known. And he had fired her for staying silent when he refused to listen. Julian stood, grabbed his coat, and took the elevator to the basement. His black Mercedes waited, but he didn't take it. He signed out one of the nondescript company vehicles. Something quieter. More forgettable. Then he drove to Southside. It had been years since he walked these streets. Not since his undergrad years, when he lived off vending machine dinners and cheap ambition, back when no one knew his name, when the world didn't expect anything but hunger. Now he wasn't sure what he was looking for, only that her name wouldn't leave his chest. A bakery on the corner caught his attention. Faint jazz hummed behind the windows. The scent of cinnamon and warm bread reached him before he touched the door. Inside, the woman behind the counter had Maya's eyes. Older, grayer, but unmistakably the same. He stepped in. The bell above the door jingled. She looked up, gaze sharp. "Can I help you?" "I'm looking for Maya Delgado." Her posture stiffened. "Who's asking?" "I'm Julian Blackwood," he replied. "I was her employer." There was a long pause. A study. Then she motioned to a wooden chair by the window. "Wait here." He did. Minutes passed. Then she appeared. Maya stepped through the back doorway in a simple apron, hair tied in a low bun. No heels. No blazer. No notepad. Just Maya. She stopped when she saw him. No smile, no anger. "What are you doing here?" she asked softly. "I came to talk. You said enough when you fired me." He took a breath. "You were right about everything. Martech, Wexel, Bright Data. Elijah told me." "I know what he told you." Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "I didn't know how much you were doing," he said. "I didn't know how much I relied on you, how much the company did." "No," she said. "You chose not to." That landed, sharp and precise. He stepped forward. "I'm not asking for an apology, but I won't go back to treating you like a shadow." She held his gaze. "Then, don't." "Come back," he said. "But not as an assistant. As a consultant. Full autonomy. No filters. You lead your own team. You answer to no one. Not even me." Her brow rose. "And if I say no, then I'll still show up," he said quietly. "Every day until I prove I'm not who I was when I let you walk away." For the first time, her silence wasn't a shield, it was consideration. She didn't say yes, but she didn't say no. And that was more than enough, for now. Chapter 2, The Woman He Couldn't Read. She didn't speak much during her first week back. Not even after the official memo announcing her as an independent consultant hit everyone's inbox. Not when whispers followed her through the hallways. Not even when Julian himself watched her walk past his office, heels sharp, posture sharp, eyes sharper. But everyone noticed something had shifted. Maya Delgado didn't return as the assistant they remembered. She came back different, unbothered, unapologetic. Julian caught her reflection in the boardroom glass the next morning. Hair pulled back in a tight knot, a navy suit clean-cut and precise. She was reviewing a flowchart with Elijah, redlining numbers with surgical focus. He stepped into the room. She didn't flinch. "I'd like to go over the new client alignment strategy with you," he said carefully. She looked up. "Already handled. I've sent the memo to department heads. If you'd like to review it, it's in your inbox." His inbox, the same place where he'd ignored her warnings before. She was reminding him. Not rudely, not even coldly, just clearly. "I see," he said. Maya offered a small nod. "Anything else?" He wanted to say something more, maybe even thank you, but she was already turning back to the whiteboard. Dismissed. At lunch, Julian found himself standing outside the analytics wing, listening to her voice. Elijah, don't shortcut the redundancy layers. We can't afford another system freeze. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was firm, commanding. People listened, and it hit him, not like a jolt, but like a realization that had been building for months. She'd never been invisible. She'd simply chosen not to make noise. That evening, he pulled up the security footage from the week she left. Not to watch her. To understand. She was exiting the elevator with a box in her arms. Small, neat, efficient. She paused in the lobby. Looked back. Not at the building, not at the people, but at the elevator doors, the space she used to occupy. Then she walked out. No drama, no scene. Just Maya, as always, disappearing before anyone knew they needed her to stay. The next day, Julian called Elijah to his office. How long was she helping you? He asked again. Elijah leaned against the desk. Over a year, maybe 2. Julian blinked. 2 years? She caught a data leak before our mainframe registered it. I asked her how she noticed. She said she read the timestamps during a break. A break? She rewrote our whole diagnostic process in a notebook over a weekend, Elijah said, then just handed it over, like it was nothing. Julian exhaled. And you never told me. I tried. You said it wasn't her responsibility. Elijah offered a small shrug. I didn't argue. She didn't want credit. Julian pressed his fingers to his temple. She rewrote legal contracts. She optimized tech systems. And you called her the quiet one, Elijah said, not cruelly. Julian couldn't argue. Later, Julian passed by legal. Marcus was in the corner, reading a printed contract aloud to his team. This section was hers, he said, pointing. Cleanest clause transition we've had in a decade. I thought a law firm sent it. Turns out it was Maya. Is that in the record? Someone asked. Marcus shook his head. She never logged it under her name. Julian turned and walked back to his office. This wasn't just about missed credit. This was about blindness. He had built a company on instinct, vision, control, and Maya had undermined all of that, not with defiance, but with unshakable precision. She had quietly held his empire together, while he had dismissed her as decoration. That night, he didn't go home. He stayed late, combing through months of emails she'd sent. Each one now read like a signal flare, clean, sharp, always right. But buried, ignored. He searched her name in project records. Again and again it appeared, not as lead, but as consulted. Noted by M.D. Adjusted per Maya's suggestion. She was everywhere, a ghost in the machine. He leaned back in his chair, ashamed. This wasn't a company failure. It was a personal one. He hadn't seen her, and he couldn't stop seeing her now. Friday came fast. Julian entered the boardroom late, expecting silence. Instead, he walked into Maya, presenting Phase 2 of the Phoenix rollout. By shifting resource allocations from 3% to 5% on the server-side load balancing, she was saying, we avoid bottlenecks during concurrent updates. I've already updated DevOps. Victoria Hale entered midway through, heels clicking, her smile lacquered and late. Apologies, she purred. I was in a pitch meeting. We're discussing retention strategy, Maya said without missing a beat. You're 10 minutes behind. Catch up. Victoria. Julian said nothing. He didn't need to. Maya had claimed the space, not with force, with legitimacy. After the meeting, he caught up to her near the elevators. You're not who I thought you were, he said. No, she replied, eyes steady. I never was. He looked at her, standing there like she belonged to a future that had nothing to do with him, unless she allowed it. Maya, he said quietly, would you ever let someone protect you if they saw you clearly? She tilted her head. That depends. On what? On whether they're still seeing a ghost. The elevator opened behind her. She stepped in. But as the doors began to close, she met his eyes again. This time, she didn't look away. And neither did he. Chapter 3. Silence leaves a mark. She hadn't been gone that long. just under 2 weeks. But in those 2 weeks, Julian had learned the price of her silence. Now he was learning the weight of her presence. And it wasn't subtle. On Monday morning, Maya's name reappeared in the internal directory, this time under a different title. Strategic Consultant, Direct Report, none. No assistant badge. No dotted line reporting. Just her name. Standing alone, Julian had made sure of it. He also made sure her new office wasn't on the administrative floor. Instead, it was 2 doors down from his, on the executive level. When she arrived that morning, she walked past the secretaries, the board members, the skeptics, without faltering once. Her tailored slacks and blazer were charcoal gray, her hair pulled back clean, her eyes unreadable. She didn't knock when she entered her new office. She didn't ask for help moving in. She just started. By noon, she'd already met with Elijah, rerouted the Phoenix testing protocol, flagged 3 scheduling conflicts in logistics, and sent 2 memos, one about security redundancies and one about reassigning analytics roles based on performance and not seniority. Julian watched from his office window, heart in his throat. She wasn't loud. She wasn't even trying to prove anything. She was just finally being visible. At 2 p.m., Claire stepped into Julian's office with wide eyes. Maya just asked me to forward all departmental reports through her before next week's board review. Julian looked up. So? I mean, isn't that something you usually approve? Julian leaned back, watching Maya through the glass. Not anymore. In the afternoon, Maya called a meeting with all department heads, unusual for someone technically outside the hierarchy. Julian sat in the back of the room, silently observing. She stood at the head of the table, her hands calm, her tone even. We've spent years building our empire on speed, she began. But speed without accuracy is wasted motion. No slides, no pitch deck, just her voice. Moving forward, we do things deliberately. That means clear documentation, forward visibility, and no more last-minute patches. We don't fix chaos, we prevent it. Elijah was the first to nod. Then Marcus. Then everyone. Julian didn't speak once. He didn't have to. Maya had taken her place, and no one questioned it. That evening, as the sun melted over the Chicago skyline, Julian walked to her office with a cup of coffee in hand. He knocked, gently. She didn't look up. Unless that's code for a crisis, you can set it down. 3rd drawer's still broken. Care. He blinked, surprised. You remembered my drawer, he asked. I remember everything. He set the coffee down. I noticed. She finally looked at him. Their eyes met. And for the first time in years, Julian didn't feel like the most powerful person in the room. He felt like someone trying to earn his place in it. I'd like to support you, he said. You already are, she replied. But not as your boss, he added. Maya raised a brow. Then what? He didn't answer, because he didn't know yet. But he knew this. Her silence had always held weight. And now that she was speaking, the whole building listened. Chapter 4. No one silences me now. There had been a time when Maya took notes while others talked over her. A time when her ideas were filtered through louder voices, polished by someone else's ego. That time was over. She didn't say it aloud. She's proved it. The memo went out at 7:04 a.m. Subject: New Internal Review Protocols. From Maya Delgado, Strategic Consultant. 2. All departments. Effective immediately, all interdepartmental project proposals will be vetted for conflict overlap, timeline integrity, and dependency risk before budget approval. I will be reviewing proposals personally. If that's a problem, feel free to escalate. By 8:00 a.m., the building was buzzing. By 8:30, Victoria Hale was pacing in front of Julian's office. She's rewriting protocol without clearance, Victoria snapped. She doesn't even have a direct report line. Who approved this? Julian didn't blink. I did. You gave her operational authority. I gave her my trust. Victoria crossed her arms. She doesn't belong at that table. She was an assistant. Now she's hijacking project flow. Julian stood slowly. And yet, The last 5 meetings she led ran on time. Yours don't. Victoria flinched. This isn't about timing, it's about boundaries. No, he said, it's about results. And he left her standing there, lips parted with words she couldn't use anymore. Maya spent her morning walking between departments, not with a clipboard, but with questions. What are we building that actually matters? What are we repeating because no one challenged it? And always, what's broken that no one's naming? People answered her, not because they had to, because they trusted her to listen. At 10:15, Elijah cornered her in the elevator. "You rewrote the predictive churn model," he said, holding up a tablet. "I adjusted it," she corrected. "Your model was good, just didn't account for passive deactivations. You added an entire vertical logic tree." "I had time." He laughed, shaking his head. "You're not real, are you?" Maya looked up at him. "No. I'm just finally being seen." The real test came at noon. The Phoenix Initiative Review, Phase 2 projections. A room full of board members, directors, and Victoria, who took the seat beside Julian like it belonged to her. Maya walked in 10 minutes early. No slides, just a single folder under one arm. She stood at the head of the table, and she began. "Let's not waste time," she said, calm and exact. "Here's what's working, here's what's failing, and here's what I'm not tolerating anymore." Panic deadlines, ego-based reassignments, and people approving things they haven't read. She opened the folder and passed out 5 printed pages. Not glossy packets, not branded decks, just clean, actionable data. Phase 2 is behind, but not broken, unless we continue pretending our problems are PR instead of structural. Someone, an older VP, cleared his throat. "And what exactly gives you the authority to override executive reporting?" Maya looked him dead in the eye. "The same thing that let me keep this company standing for the past 2 years while no one noticed." Competence. Dead silence. Then someone at the far end of the table clapped. Soft. Intentional. Elijah. Then another. Julian didn't speak. He didn't have to, because no one dared interrupt her again. Afterward, Victoria followed Maya into the hallway. "You've got nerve," she said, lips tight. Maya didn't slow her pace. Correction. "I've got clarity." "You think Julian sees you now?" Victoria hissed. "You think that matters?" Maya stopped. "No. I don't need him to see me. I needed him to stop pretending I was invisible. And what happens when he gets tired of you?" Maya turned, calm as ever. "He doesn't own me. That's the difference." Victoria stared, as if trying to summon the old Maya, the quiet one, the one who wouldn't talk back. But that woman didn't live here anymore. Julian found her that evening in the atrium. She was sitting on the bench near the koi pond, half lit, half shy, the chaos of the day behind her, but not forgotten. He didn't sit, just stood beside her. "Victoria's been warned," he said. "I don't need you to fight my battles." "I know," he said quietly. "I'm not trying to protect you." She looked up. "Then what are you trying to do?" She didn't smile. But something in her gaze softened. "You're not who you were," she said. "No," he admitted. "And neither are you." She looked away. "Good." Then she stood and left him standing there, next to the koi pond, unsure whether the ache in his chest was shame or something far more dangerous. I hope the sabotage she didn't see. The thing about betrayal is, it never comes from across enemy lines. It comes from the people who smile when you walk into the room. The ones who compliment your clarity, but whisper sabotage into the seams of your success. And Maya, she'd survived enough to expect it. But even she didn't see this one coming. It started with a spreadsheet. Elijah slammed into her office unannounced, laptop in hand. "Did you approve this?" he asked, eyes sharp, panic simmering beneath the surface. Maya blinked. "What is it?" "Phoenix, updated metrics for tomorrow's executive briefing. It's showing system instability and prototype failure rates spiking past 60%. "That's not possible," she said, pulling the laptop toward her. The numbers were bad. Really bad. Only they weren't hers. She opened her own backup copy from earlier that morning. It didn't match. Her version, 93% prototype success. Theirs, 38%. Her pulse slowed, then dropped into something colder. Who had access to the analytics directory? She asked quietly. Elijah was already typing. Timestamp shows upload at 6:47 p.m. last night. Source, external drive. He paused. What? Maya asked. It was Jason Kim, new analyst. He used a drive from Victoria Hale's network. Maya closed her eyes. Sabotage. Smart sabotage. Because if those numbers hit the board unchallenged, it wouldn't just undermine her work, it would dismantle her credibility. Julian wouldn't know who to believe. And that was the point. She didn't hesitate. She printed the forged spreadsheet, pulled up the directory logs, grabbed her phone. Julian was in a meeting with the CFO when she entered without knocking. His assistant froze. Ma'am? Julian, Maya said, her voice steady but firm. He stood immediately. Clear the room. When the CFO left, she stepped forward and laid everything in front of him. These are the analytics Victoria planted. Jason unknowingly uploaded them. They're falsified. Julian didn't blink. You're sure? He asked. Elijah traced the file path, her drive, her timestamp, her signature. He picked up the phone. Security, escort Victoria Hale out of the building, effective immediately. Do not let her back into the building. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was charged. You believe me? Maya said, quieter now. Julian looked up, meeting her gaze. I should have believed you the first time. News spread fast. By 4:00 p.m., the office was a storm of whispers. Victoria was gone. Maya was still standing, and no one could deny that she'd earned it. Jason approached her office near closing time, pale and trembling. I didn't know, he said. She said it was just a patch. I didn't check the numbers, I should have. Maya placed a hand on his shoulder. Next time, she said gently, don't trust anything that doesn't come directly from me. He nodded fast. I'm so sorry. I know. And she meant it. He was young, untrained in politics, a casualty of someone else's agenda. He didn't need punishment. He needed someone to believe he could still do better. Julian knocked on her door just before 6:00. I owe you an apology, he said. She didn't look up. Not just for this, he continued, but for everything. For underestimating you, for dismissing your silence, for assuming I knew who you were. She finally glanced up, eyes guarded. You don't get to fix everything with a speech. I know. He stepped closer. But I'm trying to change, because knowing you is changing me. That caught her. Just slightly. A flicker in her stillness. She closed the file on her desk. Change doesn't happen in declarations, she said. It happens in consistency. Julian nodded slowly. Then I guess I'll keep showing up. For the first time, she didn't stop him when he stepped closer. But just as he opened his mouth, her phone buzzed. A message. Her mother. Maya's expression darkened. What is it? Julian asked. She stared at the screen. Elena looked up. A man in a suit came to my mother's bakery, she said, asking questions. About me. Julian's jaw tensed. Who? I don't know. But I don't think this is about Victoria. And for the first time since she returned, Maya's voice faltered. This feels older. Chapter 6. You were right to be afraid. There are two kinds of silence. The kind that protects, and the kind that presses in, like a storm waiting to shatter what's left standing. This was the second kind. They didn't speak much during the drive. Julian had insisted on going with her. Maya hadn't argued. Now they were headed south, back to the neighborhood that shaped her, scarred her, and almost buried her years ago. The bakery came into view just as dusk painted the street in ash blue and gold. Her mother was already waiting on the steps, arms crossed, broom forgotten at her side. I was here an hour ago, she said the moment they stepped out of the SUV. White guy, late 40s, expensive shoes, the kind that don't belong on this sidewalk. Julian's jaw tightened. Did he give a name? No, but he left this. She handed Maya a plain white envelope. Inside, one line typed on heavy cardstock. Some people don't stay silent forever. Maya's fingers trembled. Julian took the card, eyes scanning it, then her face. "What does that mean?" he asked. She didn't answer at first, just stared at the words like they'd crawled out from under her past. Then, finally, "It means someone knows who I used to be." Back at the apartment, Maya sat cross-legged on the floor, her back against the couch, eyes unfocused. Julian stood at the window, city lights flickering in his reflection. "Talk to me," he said gently. She stared at the floor. "I used to work for a tech startup. Small team. Brilliant product, but the CEO, Daniel Rhee, was corrupt. He embezzled money, harassed employees, buried anyone who got in his way." Julian turned slowly. "You tried to report him?" She nodded. "I had the documents, emails, voice memos, everything. I even drafted a federal complaint." "What happened?" Maya looked up. "They found out where my mother lived. I was 23. Broke, scared. I backed out." Julian's voice was low. "You survived." "I ran," she corrected, "and I've regretted it every day since." The next morning, she arrived at Blackwood Enterprises early. Julian was already waiting in her office. He didn't say good morning. He just placed a folder on her desk. "Rhee's firm rebranded last year, new investors. He's a rising name in corporate consulting now." She opened the folder. Photocopies of press releases, SEC filings, investment portfolios, and 2 blurry surveillance images of Rhee leaving her old building. "He knows I'm visible now," she said quietly. "He's afraid I'll talk." Julian's voice darkened. "Then we bring this to legal. We file. We protect you." "No," Maya said. "Not yet." Julian blinked. "Why not?" "Because if we go public without proof, he'll spin it, bury me, again." Julian stepped closer. "So what do you do?" She met his eyes. "This time, I speak, but on my terms." The next few days passed in a blur. Maya worked in near silence, but the storm inside her was gathering shape. She reviewed old files, contacted former coworkers who'd left without explanations. One of them, Jasmine, had cried on the phone when Maya said Rhee's name. "I still have screenshots," Jasmine whispered. "If you're really doing this, I'll stand with you." Maya's hand trembled as she hung up. The silence was breaking, and not just hers. Then came the knock. Boardroom. Full attendance, Phoenix pre-launch debrief. Maya was halfway through her presentation, data glowing behind her, her voice steady as steel. When Victoria Hale walked in, Julian stood. "You're not authorized to be here." Victoria smiled, cold, triumphant. "I'm not here for authorization. I'm here as a courtesy. Someone's been digging into your Golden Girls past. Thought you should know." She dropped a manila folder onto the table. Julian didn't flinch. Victoria smirked. "Ever heard of Daniel Rhee?" The room stilled. "He's a known fraud." "And your shining star? She used to work for him." All eyes turned to Maya. She stepped forward, didn't hesitate. "I was his employee, I saw what he did, I documented it, and I stayed silent because I was scared." She looked to Julian. "I'm not scared anymore." Julian nodded slowly. "Then we support you." Victoria scoffed. "That scandal could ruin your company." Julian turned to her, voice low and lethal. "Then let it. Because integrity means more than image." The boardroom didn't erupt, not right away, but Elijah stood. Then a slow clap, then another, until the silence cracked, not from shame, but from respect. That night, Julian found her on the rooftop. She didn't look up. "I'm scared," she said. "You don't have to be." "Yes," she whispered. "I do. I have to be scared and still show up. That's the point." Julian reached out, took her hand. This time, she didn't pull away. "You changed everything," he said. "So did you," she replied. And in the silence between them, something fierce and fragile finally took root. Trust. Chapter 7. The Hearing. The air in the federal building felt different. Too clean, too still. Maya had faced boardrooms, executives, rivals, who sharpened smiles like weapons. But this was different. Because this time, she wasn't just defending her work. She was defending the woman she used to be. The one she'd abandoned, the one who still lived inside her. She stood in front of the mirror that morning, buttoning her blazer with deliberate calm. Her fingers trembled just slightly. Julian waited downstairs, already in a sharp navy suit. His presence didn't fill the room, it grounded it. They didn't speak in the car. He just reached over and laced his fingers through hers. That said enough. The conference room was quiet, but humming. Marble walls, legal pads, coffee going cold in stiff paper cups. Daniel Rhee sat at the end of the long table, a smirk on his lips. Like none of this mattered. Like she still wasn't a threat. But when Maya entered, her back straight, her eyes steady, he blinked. Just once. And that was enough. Julian stayed behind her, not beside her. She didn't need a shield, she needed space. The questioning began. She spoke clearly, calmly. I worked at Novamind Inc. from 2016 to 2018. I was responsible for internal communications, proposal development, and early-stage legal prep. She passed them printed emails, time-stamped memos, meeting notes, screenshots. I documented misconduct, expense fraud, unrecorded harassment complaints, investor deception. And why didn't you come forward earlier? The lead attorney asked. Maya didn't flinch. Because I was 23, because I was threatened, because I was told my mother would pay the price. Daniel scoffed. Baseless. The attorney raised a hand. Mr. Rhee, you'll have your turn. Maya continued. I came forward now because silence doesn't protect you. It only protects the people who hurt others. The room fell into stillness after she finished. Then, thank you, Ms. Delgado, the official said. Please step outside while we review your testimony. In the hallway, Maya sat down on a cold bench. Her palms were clammy, her knees locked. Julian crouched beside her. You were flawless, he said. I was terrified. He smiled, but his voice was serious. That's what makes it brave. She looked at him, then, eyes filled with emotion she didn't want to name yet. If this destroys your company, he interrupted, I'd still stand by you, even if it destroyed me. Then her phone buzzed. SEC files formal charges against Daniel Rhee following whistleblower testimony. She stared, then let out the breath she didn't know she'd been holding. It's done, she whispered. Julian stepped closer, his voice low. No, it's just beginning. 3 weeks later, Maya walked into Blackwood Enterprises not as a consultant, not as an assistant, but as Director of Strategic Development. Her name was on the office door. Glass, etched, permanent. No one questioned it. Not after what she did. Not after who she became. Her first initiative? A full-scale internal whistleblower program. Anonymous. Protected. Independent. Julian approved it in full. Without edits. Late one evening, he found her on the rooftop again, tea in hand, wind in her hair. Funny how quiet it is up here, she said without turning. I thought you hated silence, he said. No, she replied softly. I just wanted to be heard in it. He stepped beside her, slipped his hand into hers. I hear you now. She looked up at him. And what do you hear? She asked. Strength, clarity, the woman I love. She blinked. You said that like it was the most natural thing in the world. Because it is. Chapter 8. The Jacket and the Promise. Sometimes, the smallest gestures carry the heaviest meaning. For Maya, it wasn't the boardrooms or the legal battles that stayed with her. It was the quiet moments no one noticed. The soft unfolding of trust between two people who had learned how to see each other. Julian showed up unexpectedly one chilly evening, rain drizzling softly against the windows of her new office. In his hands, a sleek black box wrapped with a silver ribbon. Maya looked up, surprised. You look like you're about to apologize, she said, voice half teasing. He shook his head, stepping closer. No apologies. He offered the box. She hesitated, slowly untied the ribbon and lifted the lid. Inside was a tailored navy blazer, classic, sharp with a corduroy collar. "Grandpa Earl's jacket," he said quietly. "Restored. Tailored for you." Maya traced the fabric, fingers brushing the soft collar. "It's beautiful." "It's a reminder," Julian said, "of where you came from and where you're going." That night, the city outside faded into a blur as Maya slipped into the jacket. She stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the cuffs. For the first time in a long time, she felt not like someone hiding behind silence, but someone stepping into her own power. Days turned into weeks. Her program at Blackwood flourished, employee satisfaction climbed, turnover rates dropped. The company shifted, not just in numbers but in culture. Julian watched her, sometimes from a distance, sometimes sitting beside her in late meetings, both aware of the fragile trust growing between them. One afternoon, Maya found him reviewing projections in his office. "I never told you," she began, "about the nights I stayed awake rewriting policies, redrafting contracts, afraid to make a mistake." Julian looked up, eyes softening. "You don't have to say it. But I want you to know," she continued, voice steady, "that us, it's not about who's louder or who has the title. It's about showing up. Every day, even when it's hard." He nodded. "And I want to show up for you." She smiled, real, full. "Then show up tomorrow." The promise hung between them like a quiet vow. No grand declaration, no sweeping gestures, just presence. And for Maya, that was enough. The storm in the shelter. The world outside the glass walls of Blackwood Enterprises raged. Media frenzy, investor doubts, boardroom whispers. Inside, Maya and Julian built their sanctuary. Not from silence, but from shared strength. When the scandal broke, Maya's whistleblower story splashed across headlines. She didn't retreat. She faced the storm head-on. Threatening messages arrived at her apartment and her mother's bakery. Security increased, cameras installed. Julian refused to let her face it alone. One rainy evening, as thunder rolled over the city, Maya sat with Julian in her apartment. The quiet between them was heavy but honest. "I never thought I'd be here," she said, fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup. "Not like this, not with someone who sees me." He took her hand. "I'm not just seeing you, I'm standing with you." At the office, tensions flared. Victoria's allies tried to undermine Maya's programs, spreading rumors. But the team rallied around her. Her leadership was no longer questioned. Julian faced his board in an emergency meeting. Investors feared collapse, stock prices dipped. A veteran board member, Garrick, leaned forward, voice sharp. "You're in love with her, aren't you?" Julian didn't flinch. "What I feel is irrelevant. Maya did the right thing." "Then why not distance the company from her?" "Because she is the company's future," Julian said. "Integrity, vision, courage, all embodied in her." The boardroom hummed with reluctant acceptance. Julian met Garrick's gaze. "Be willing to lose everything for her?" Garrick nodded slowly. "I already am." Back in her apartment, Maya read messages from strangers, women inspired by her courage to speak out. One stood out. "Because of you, I found my voice." Tears blurred her vision. Julian arrived then, rain-drenched but smiling. "You look like you stepped out of a bad romance novel," she teased. He grinned. "I needed to see you." He handed her a typed note. "Strength isn't control. It's knowing when to listen. You changed me." Maya's smile was fragile but genuine. "Not a proposal. Just a promise," he said, "that no matter what comes next, you won't face it alone." The city lights flickered beyond the window. In that quiet apartment, two hearts began to beat in sync. Chapter 10. The Legacy They Built. The 10-year anniversary gala was more than a celebration. It was a testament to survival, to resilience, to the quiet power of a woman who refused to disappear. The ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and the city's elite. Julian took the stage, his voice steady but full of something rare: humility. Success isn't built in boardrooms or behind glass doors. he said. "It's built in the unseen hours. By the people no one applauds until one day they speak." He glanced toward Maya, seated in the front row, eyes shining with quiet pride. "When they do, you listen." Applause swelled, but all Julian cared about was her smile. After the speeches, Maya joined him on the rooftop terrace, the city lights casting a soft glow. "Funny how quiet it is up here," she said, wrapping her coat tighter. "I thought you hated silence." "I don't," she replied. "I just wanted to be heard in it." He slipped his hand into hers. "I hear you now." She looked up, meeting his gaze. "And what do you hear?" "Strength. Clarity. The woman I love." She blinked, a slow smile breaking through. "You said that like it was the most natural thing in the world." "Because it is." Their journey hadn't been easy. There were scars, mistakes, doubt. But their love was real, earned in the quiet battles, the unspoken promises, and the everyday courage of showing up. Maya's nameplate gleamed on her office door, etched in glass, permanent. She was no longer the quiet assistant. She was the legacy. The years that followed weren't fairy tales. There were no grand declarations, no perfect endings written in gold. Just quiet mornings, whispered apologies, and a love rebuilt on respect and presence. Julian learned that power wasn't control, that strength wasn't volume, and that the woman he had underestimated all those years ago was the heart his empire could never survive without. Maya never needed the spotlight. She only wanted to be heard, not for applause, but for truth, for integrity, for the chance to build something real. Together, in the stillness of the night, standing side by side on the rooftop terrace overlooking Chicago, they found peace, not in promises, not in vows, but in knowing they would show up every day. Their story wasn't just about a billionaire CEO and his assistant. It was about every woman who has ever been silenced, overlooked, or underestimated. It was about the quiet courage it takes to stand up, not with a roar, but with unwavering resolve. Sometimes the loudest truths live in the silence between words. And sometimes the greatest love is the one earned in quiet moments. A thought for you. Have you ever been underestimated because of your silence? When did you find your voice? Share your story in the comments, because your voice matters. Thank you for listening, for believing in the power of quiet strength, and for being part of a community where every story, no matter how silent, is heard. If this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and join us for more tales of courage, love, and transformation. Until next time, take care and remember, your silence can hold the loudest truths.